misleading Kenyans.
That's why I want you to respond.
No, you're misleading Kenyans.
I should not mislead them in your presence. Of course, you should provide the alternative view. But now, let's talk about something else that is on what page? Page 5 of the Daily Nation. Agencies faulted for defying tenders order. This is in accordance with the president, the deputy president, who said that he directed the Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich to compile a list of the agencies and hand it over to the Public Service Head Joseph Kinyua within 30 days for action to be taken. And what is the question? They're supposed to publish tender information on their website, risk sanctions, including budget freeze. It has government agencies that have defied an executive order requiring them to publicize tender information on their website. They risk sanctions, including budget freeze, as it has emerged with the deputy president directing that a list be compiled on who has not complied. You recall that last year when the president was announcing some of the plans to ensure that the country is able to stem corruption, then there was that proposal or that directive that every state agency or department must publish the information on the websites on who has been given what tender and for who are the directors, but you still don't have this. And I want to combine that with a question that you now see a directive that is it a proposal? Where is it? That state officers and public officers will not be allowed to trade with government. The president last week said that if you're a public official and in the public arena, you either choose to work in the public or go to do private business. Where does this lie in the interest of economy and money?
Yes, personally I want to support the president, the directive for several reasons. Being number one, we only have about 700,000 public servants. Those people who don't work in public service, adults, they're about 23 million. So therefore, we must, as a leader, the rights and also the interests of the so-called 23 million Kenyans who are not in government employment should really rank supreme. Number two, there's always a conflict of interest when you find a government official. He is the one presiding, let's say, a tender committee, and then you find he has a company which is tendering. It goes without saying he's going to have his own company. Or even a case of a traffic officer who is supposed to look at traffic rules and enforce them, but incidentally he has matatus. So he's going to favor his own matatus to the detriment of the rest. We are in a free liberal economy which dictates all players must be equal. But when you have a situation where public servants are having vested interest in business, they will always be 1 or 2 steps ahead vis-a-vis the rest of the other players. So to ensure the playing ground, the market is free, we need to adhere to the presidential directive of ensuring all parties are in a free and open market economy for that market to operate optimally.
So, Mheshimiwa, we have had a country where so many public officials have been doing business privately, and now this appears like there's a push to end it. What are the chances of success?
It's good to look at it against the background of where this came from, because this executive order number 1 of 2019 really reverses the Duncan Degwa 1972 reports, which gave rise to an executive order that allowed civil servants to do business within certain parameters. And I think then they thought it was possible to draw the thin line between do your civil service work, do business, but declare interest. But obviously this was misused. A lot of public servants actually end up redirecting tenders into companies either in the names of their families or their proxies or other things. It is against this background that you're able to see junior officers, like I believe was it the NHIF one who owns a chopper and hundreds of thousands of private property under circumstances which are unexplained. Of course, we have to juxtapose this to the constitutional requirement of the right to property. I'm sure my colleague Senator Kang'ata will say those rights are not absolute. In this respect, I will agree with him on this one. But of course, we have to balance it with if somebody owns property, under what circumstances would you deny them? It's a different thing to say you're denying somebody the right to own property if they're owning it legitimately. Right. I think what this executive order is addressing is not denying somebody right to own property. It's saying you make a choice ahead of time. We have civil service, there are X number of positions, you can take this up and don't do business. You could choose to say, I work for 10 years, after that I don't want to do that, I want to do my business. But if you do choose to be in civil service, like you were saying, you're a police officer, you're conflicted, you're going to be arresting people for traffic, or you're a police officer and other police officers know your vehicles are on the streets, they're not going to arrest it. So this creates a lot of conflict, and I want to agree with the president on this particular executive order, that the Duncan Degwa one has created a lot of civil servants and multimillionaires owning property in a manner that really wasn't legitimate. But it's also good to contextualize this against the entire executive order itself, because I think other than the civil service directive, I think there were other issues which now I think the DP agrees with. The audit thing, finally, I hope we will come, because if you're saying civil servants don't own property, how are you going to tell that you're not doing business? We must do the audit, and I'm very happy the DP says that he wants to be the #1 person from whom we begin that audit, and I hope that we do begin that audit. The second context we need to put this against is people have been asking, is this executive order directed at one person? Is it trying to trim the powers of the DP? And I looked up my constitution yesterday, and I saw two things. One is that the president has the power to reorganize government. He's the principal person who coordinates and chairs cabinet. The other powers that the other people have are powers the president delegates, and he can delegate to any cabinet minister coordination. Right. If you read the powers or the title of the Ministry of Interior, it has annexes to it which talks about and coordination of government. So I think the president was perfectly in order. And lastly, on this point, the deputy president has insulation against the position of deputy president in terms of removal, so that you cannot remove him at whim like it used to be in the previous position of the vice president. But in respect of allocation of duty, the only duty allocated to him is he shall be a principal assistant, and he shall do such other jobs as the president may arrogate to him.
May assign. And Mheshimiwa Osoro, in this country we have had state or public officials who do not directly do business with the government, but you find that they have proxies, maybe their spouses or maybe their relatives that run certain companies. Even if we say that as a government official you should not be doing business with the state, does that stop these proxies from working, and how effective can this be?
First, let me tell Honorable Luoch that the Deputy President has never and will never be against the audit, by the audit of on his property, or rather on what he owns. He's been on record as supporting the President all through. In fact, he even made a joke earlier that one major TV station aired his properties, and then or what he owned then, and he expected that probably they'll proceed with the other people, but they stopped at him. So the Deputy President supports lifestyle audit, and he'll never be against it. But having said that, and coming back to the Executive Order #2 by His Excellency the President, and straight on owning property, this is something that is is actually long overdue. I am on record here on this station as having said that I sponsored a bill which is actually coming up once we resume from recess, that bars police officers in particular from owning matatus.
But does that stop the spouses from doing the same business?
I think, of course it can't. It can't stop the... But you see now, we need now to get...
That is why my question, how effective can it be? Because I can use the resources that I have to sponsor my spouse or my relative to go ahead and do the same business, and I still have some interest.
Can I just to intervene there, and sorry for intervening, I'm just trying to assist him. There is in law what you call the equitable doctrine of tracing. This doctrine simply means that property that is traceable directly or indirectly to you, even if to a third party, your relative, your spouse, or a partner, if somehow the proceeds of it the assistance indirectly or indirectly, either by assisting them to get a tender or to get some payment or to get some illegal proceeds, so long as it is traceable, it's an equitable doctrine. So long as it is traceable to a person associated to you, it can be recovered in law.
And you saw that practically when the Governor Obado was being tried, or rather, when he was being investigated on corruption matters. You saw that his accounts, wives, children were all, frozen. So clearly, there is that kind. If that chain can be followed, that it's from you, your wife, or any other person, so that one can come, even if you use your proxies. And number two, we're living in a very funny society. Now, if you can't really trust your line, like kind of very close friend, Sam, you can't trust me to hold property on your behalf, clearly. So this is one step. In as much as you want to look at that matter deeply, it's actually a step that will actually have you take even other serious measures to make sure that your property is not lost, even if you want to use a proxy. This thing deters you a little bit and it makes you become more cautious. This thing of people becoming instant millionaires upon serving government or rather public service within a short period of time should actually stop. That people nowadays are fighting every person is fighting to get a government job so that they can get things to their favor. And that is why I said earlier that, for instance, the police officers, I already sponsored a bill in Parliament that I'm sure that members of Parliament will be supporting. That stops all the police officers from owning matatus. Because at times, I was once hit by a matatu, and then when the police officer came, the way he reacted all through, that this is owned by my boss, there's nothing much you can do and stuff. And I was like, okay, what are you telling me? So this thing brings this kind of conflict of interest, that where you have an interest in anything, even in Parliament, you look at the standing orders, when you have an interest in anything, in that committee you have to declare your interest first before you sit and hear that. Yes.
Senator Kang'ata, you've been so quiet on this, but finally, I want to give you the final word.
He has interest on...
No, it's okay for him to have interest. How do you balance the interest that the government wants to fight these conflict of interest? How do you balance that against the interests of people affiliated to you from the right to property and still be in a position to fight the conflict of interest?
No, we are open. We follow the truth. It doesn't matter whether that truth affects us. So for us, we are not conflicted. We just want to ensure President's agenda is realized. So we are going to do everything that ought to be done to assist the President achieve his agenda. Okay,
let me clarify my question. We are saying that state officials should avoid conflict of interest because now they should actually not be trading with the government. Their spouses, he's saying that you can trace that interest to them. So how do you ensure that that spouse still enjoys the right to own property and do business in the country vis-a-vis the interest that you want to avoid conflict of interest with the state?
But no, he has said it. Surely you cannot hide behind people who are connected to you to continue doing business. So that is going to stop.
And that one does not stop the spouse from doing any business. If you're doing genuine business, and it's well explainable that you can actually trace back to the last coin, what is wrong with that? It doesn't stop any person from doing that. What we are saying is that you cannot steal money from the public and hide it in your wife's account. But if the wife can actually explain that this is how I made this million, I mean, there is nothing wrong with that. Yes, it's actually not direct that, now, once you freeze the corrupt person's account, you come straight now to their wife and everything. You will have to give this, that is why we've got the right to fair hearing and Article 24. So if you're given a fair hearing and you explain yourself, I mean, really, I don't think it's a big mountain.
Mheshimiwa Loch, you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to say that to be sure, I hope and I think this proposal is not intended to stifle legitimate business that your spouse and other people. I mean, really, everybody then would freeze. I may be in the civil service. My wife is not employed. She does her juakali, sells her wares or whatever. I mean, it cannot be that because I'm in civil service, my wife should not be able to open a kibanda somewhere. I think the mischief behind this is that there should not be illegitimate or improper benefit from my position in civil service.
Okay.
And then hiding it under the guise of my wife or other people doing business.